There are moments that almost feel unfair. You sit across from someone, maybe over coffee, maybe in a room full of people, and nothing important is said. The conversation is ordinary, safe, even a little awkward. But somehow, you go home thinking about her anyway. Not because she flirted, not because she confessed anything, just because something in the silence stayed with you. And if you've ever carried that feeling for days, quietly wondering whether you imagined it, stay with me. I'd love it if you subscribed before we go any further, because these conversations are for the men who rarely hear someone put their inner world into words. One of the quietest forms of love isn't loud at all. It's restraint. People usually imagine love as movement. Someone reaches out, someone admits their feelings, someone takes the risk. But in many cases, especially when emotions feel important, people do the opposite. They become careful. Not because they don't care, because they suddenly care too much. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. A man who normally jokes with everyone suddenly becomes strangely calm around one woman. He thinks before every sentence. He deletes messages, writes them again, then decides not to send anything at all. Meanwhile, the woman isn't acting much differently. She also starts choosing her words. She notices tiny things about him but pretends she doesn't. She remembers what he said 3 weeks ago, then acts surprised when he brings it up again. Neither person wants to make the first mistake. Neither wants to ruin something that hasn't even begun. So nothing happens. At least, that's what it looks like from the outside. Inside, it's noisy, very noisy. There's another strange detail that people often miss. When attraction is only physical, people usually try harder to impress. When affection starts becoming emotional, something unexpected can happen. People become more afraid of being misunderstood than of being rejected. Think about that for a second. Rejection hurts. Being misunderstood feels lonely. That's why someone who secretly loves you may suddenly seem more distant than before. Not colder, just more guarded. You ask yourself, did I do something wrong? Sometimes no. Sometimes they simply realized you mattered. And that realization made every interaction feel heavier than either of you expected. There's a small moment I've noticed between people who are quietly falling for each other. It almost always happens without anyone noticing. Someone says goodbye. They begin walking away. Then, almost instinctively, one of them turns around for one last look. Just one. Not to check where the other person went, to make sure they're still there. It's such a tiny thing. Most people forget it happened within seconds. But emotionally, it says something words often can't. Because when someone has already left your sight, logic says the moment is over. Feelings don't always agree. Still, that glance alone doesn't mean love. People can look back for many reasons. The interesting part isn't the glance itself, it's what usually starts happening after it. And that's where the first real sign begins to reveal itself. The first sign isn't hidden in the words you exchange. It's hidden in the strange way both of you begin protecting each other, without ever talking about it. That sounds simple. It rarely feels simple when you're living it. Imagine you're telling a story about your day. Nothing dramatic. You mention that work was exhausting or that someone disappointed you, and before you've even finished the sentence, she goes unusually quiet. Not because she has nothing to say, because she's suddenly thinking about how you feel instead of what she wants to say next. That's different. Most conversations move quickly. People wait for their turn to speak. When affection grows beneath the surface, listening changes. There's more patience, more curiosity, more moments where someone notices the emotion hiding behind an ordinary sentence. You say, "I'm fine." She hears, "Something's bothering you." She says, "It's okay." You notice the smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. Neither of you points it out, but both of you notice. It's almost unsettling how often this happens. And no, it doesn't mean either person can read minds. It simply means attention has become personal. When someone matters, your brain quietly begins collecting details. Not on purpose. It just happens. You remember the coffee she orders. She remembers that you always get quieter when you're carrying too much on your shoulders. You notice she laughs differently around certain people. She notices the tiny pause before you answer questions that make you uncomfortable. None of these things prove love by themselves, but together, they create a pattern that becomes difficult to ignore. What's fascinating is that people often try to hide this kind of care. A man may deliberately wait before replying to a message because he doesn't want to seem too eager. Meanwhile, he's read it 5 times already. A woman may tell herself not to ask if he got home safely. Then she casually sends, "Did your evening go okay?" As if she wasn't thinking about it at all. The message looks ordinary. The feeling behind it isn't. Sometimes both people spend so much energy looking calm that they completely miss what the other person is quietly revealing. And then something almost ironic begins to happen. The more they care, the more carefully they behave. Conversations become shorter than they want. Goodbyes become quicker than they wish. Compliments stay trapped behind closed lips, not because the feelings disappeared, because they suddenly feel too valuable to risk. I've seen people mistake this carefulness for disinterest. They walk away thinking, if she really liked me, she'd make it obvious. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes she's having the exact same conversation in her own mind. Maybe he's just being polite. Maybe I'm imagining everything. Maybe I shouldn't make this awkward. Fear has a remarkable way of making two people behave almost identically, while each believes they're completely alone. But there's something even more revealing than quiet concern. It's what happens when someone else enters the picture. That's where hidden feelings become much harder to disguise, and where the second sign often appears before either of you is ready to admit what it means. The second sign usually slips out when neither of you is paying attention. It appears in moments that seem too ordinary to matter. Someone mentions another person. A friend asks if you're seeing anyone. She laughs, but not quite as easily as she did a minute ago. Or maybe you're talking about your weekend and she casually asks, "Who did you go with?" The question sounds harmless. Maybe it is. But sometimes, the answer matters to her a little more than she's willing to admit. The same can happen with you. You hear another man's name. You tell yourself it doesn't mean anything. You even smile. Yet for the next few minutes, your mind keeps returning to it. Not because you're possessive, not because you're jealous in some dramatic way, because the possibility of losing someone you haven't even found yet can stir emotions that are surprisingly real. It's a strange kind of ache, quiet, almost embarrassing. Many people try to push it away. I don't even know if she likes me. So why am I thinking about this? Because feelings don't always wait for certainty. Sometimes they arrive long before courage does. Now, this doesn't mean every hint of jealousy is romantic. People can feel protective or curious for many different reasons. Context matters. Patterns matter. What you're looking for is something softer. She doesn't try to control your choices. She doesn't become angry. Instead, there's a tiny shift. A pause before she answers. A question she wouldn't normally ask. A smile that fades just a little too quickly before it returns. And you suddenly become more interested than usual in understanding who the people around her are, without planning to, without wanting to seem obvious. You might even catch yourself asking a follow-up question, then immediately wondering why you asked it. Because deep down, you already know the answer. It's amazing how often people reveal their hearts while trying to hide them. Not through dramatic confessions, through tiny interruptions. A glance that lasts a second too long when someone else is talking to you. A moment of relief when you casually mention, "No, it was just a friend." Relief is difficult to fake. It escapes before the mind has time to stop it. There's another scene I think about often. Two people are walking together after an evening out. The conversation has slowed. Neither one wants to be the first to say goodbye. So they keep finding small reasons to continue. One more question, one more joke, one more story that could have waited until tomorrow. From the outside, it looks like they're simply talking. Inside, they're quietly borrowing a few more minutes together. Time behaves differently when someone matters. 5 minutes can feel too short. An hour can disappear without either person noticing, and when you finally part ways, something unexpected happens. The conversation ends, but the connection doesn't. In fact, for many people, that's exactly when it grows stronger. Because what you do after someone leaves often reveals more than what you did while they were standing beside you. And that leads to the sweetest sign of all, the one almost nobody recognizes until much later. The third sign doesn't usually happen when you're together. It happens afterward, when the room is quiet again, when there's no one left to impress, when your phone is face down on the table, and somehow your thoughts still drift back to the same person. That's a different kind of connection. Infatuation often chases excitement. Quiet affection lingers in ordinary moments. You're buying groceries, and you suddenly remember something she said about always choosing the ripest fruit. You pass a bookstore and think, she'd probably stop here. You hear a song you barely noticed before, and now it carries a face with it. Nothing dramatic happened. No confession, no kiss, just presence. She begins to exist in places where she isn't physically there, and if she's feeling something similar, the same quiet pattern may be unfolding in her world. She sees a movie trailer and wonders if you'd enjoy it. She laughs at something during her day, then catches herself thinking, I should tell him that. Sometimes she even reaches for her phone, then stops. Not because she doesn't want to talk, because she starts asking herself questions. Am I bothering him? What if I'm the only one feeling this? What if I'm reading too much into everything? It's remarkable how often two people ask the exact same questions in different rooms, never realizing they're sharing the same uncertainty. Fear has a quiet voice. It rarely says, don't fall in love. It says, wait a little longer. Don't make this awkward. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes months. And all the while, the feelings don't necessarily disappear. They simply become better at hiding. There's something else I've noticed over the years. When someone secretly cares about you, they often become surprisingly interested in the version of yourself that other people overlook. Not your achievements, not your image. The quieter parts. They ask how your family is doing because they remember you were worried. They notice you're more tired than usual before you mention it. They remember that interview you almost forgot to tell anyone about. Those details aren't always signs of romance, but they are signs of emotional investment. And emotional investment has a way of growing roots before either person realizes what's happening. Then one day, something very small changes. Maybe you don't reply for longer than usual. Maybe she's unusually quiet. Maybe one of you cancels plans. The reaction feels bigger than the situation. Not because anyone is trying to be dramatic, because when someone quietly becomes part of your emotional routine, even a small absence leaves an unexpected space. That's often when people realize just how much the other person has come to mean to them. But even then, many still say nothing. Not because they lack feelings, because they're waiting for one impossible guarantee. A guarantee that love can never really offer. And once you understand why people wait for that certainty, you begin seeing hidden love in a completely different light. Most people believe hidden love stays hidden because someone isn't brave enough. I don't think that's the whole story. Often people stay silent because what they feel has become precious. There's more to lose now. A stranger's opinion doesn't keep you awake at night. Someone who has quietly become important can. That's why two people can spend weeks, even months, circling the same feelings without ever giving them a name. Neither one is playing games. Neither one is trying to create mystery. They're protecting something they don't yet know how to hold. If you've recognized pieces of yourself in these moments, don't rush to decide that every smile means love. It doesn't. Kindness can look warm. Friendship can feel deeply personal. Human connection is beautifully complicated. But when several of these quiet signs begin to appear together, when you both remember the little things, when concern slips through despite your efforts to hide it, when time seems to stretch whenever you're together, and when each goodbye feels just a little unfinished, it may be worth paying attention instead of dismissing your feelings. There's a question I sometimes ask people. Not, does she like you? Not even, do you love her? I ask something much simpler. Who do you become when you're around her? Do you feel the need to pretend less? Do you laugh more naturally? Do you find yourself wanting to be honest instead of impressive? Because lasting affection often isn't built on performing, it's built on feeling safe enough to stop performing. And that kind of safety is rare. When two people begin offering it to each other, even in small ways, something meaningful has already started growing. It may still need time. It may need a conversation. It may even reveal that your feelings aren't perfectly matched, and that's always a possibility worth accepting with grace. But silence isn't always the most protective choice. Sometimes silence protects fear more than it protects the heart. Sometimes one sincere sentence changes months of uncertainty. Not because it guarantees a happy ending, because it finally allows two people to stand in the same truth. If someone has been on your mind throughout this conversation, don't take that as proof of anything. Take it as an invitation to look more closely. Notice the patterns. Notice how you feel after you're with them, not only while you're with them. And if you discover that what you've both been hiding is genuine, remember this. The sweetest love stories aren't always the ones that begin with perfect words. Quite often, they begin with two people who spent far too long believing they were the only one, quietly hoping the other felt the same.